Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar about authentic relationships with self and others. My name is Kenny McCarthy, and I'll be your host. With us is Dean Lisico, and he will be your co-host. My experience in this area of relationships is working with students that have some pretty intense struggles socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. I've had the opportunity to work closely with marriage and family therapists, social workers, and families, both as a special education teacher and as a program administrator. And I'm constantly trying to learn more about relationships through conferences, seminars, couples groups, men's groups, etc. Dean is one of our experts in the field of counseling and relationships, and I'm lucky enough to get the opportunity to learn from him. Dean, will you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us just a little bit more of your background?
Thank you, Kenny. Yes, my background actually started out working with juvenile delinquent boys in a residential setting. My wife and I actually lived with them in a cottage with 26 boys. Quite an experience. Then I supervised group homes before getting into education, working as a school counselor for 20 years, district administrator for 15, and then as a consultant for the last 3 years. And I have to say, I have an advantage over Kenny in that I've had a relationship with myself for almost 65 years. So I think I've got Kenny beat by a few decades.
Yeah, a couple. Awesome. Thanks, Dean. I appreciate it. All right. Some norms for us. This webinar has been designed for you to simply just sit back and absorb the information with your camera on or off if you like. There's certain parts where you might be taking notes on a provided worksheet that we have. Dean and I will provide you with some time to take notes, but the two of us will continue talking during this time to provide examples or simply discuss the topic a bit further. So feel free to use the chat to ask questions, make comments, or participate if you'd like. We'll ask at times if anyone is interested in sharing to the group, but don't feel any pressure to participate in this way in any way. All right. For those of you that are familiar with Simon Sinek's work, you'll notice a consistent theme throughout the webinar. We've formatted each section using the why, how, and what. We chose to follow this format to provide you with the purpose or the why the section is important. The how will provide the approach framed with the parts that are most valued. And the what will provide specific actions or details that will help to hold us accountable for fulfilling the values and the purpose. All right, so today we're focusing on adult relationships, and we're going to start with the self and then move on to relationships with others. All right, so let's start by diving into our relationship with ourself. This is our why, our purpose, because authentic relationships are just such a crucial part of our ultimate goal as educators, which is educating the whole child. And I like this quote here by Toni Collette. The better you know yourself, the better your relationship with the rest of the world. And this is our how, or our values. We value each of the words on the left-hand side. And as we move through each part, the word will be highlighted. And so we'll have know, develop, maintain, and restore. And so you'll see this theme throughout as we go. Finally, though, the what is the actions or the details, and you'll see these along with the values on the left-hand side. So the first part we'll work through is knowing ourselves and what it looks like when we show up at our best. And so the first thing we're going to start with is being introverted or extroverted. And so a basic understanding would ask us the question, how do we gain or lose energy? So do you become more energized when you spend some time alone, quietly relaxing your mind? Or do you become exhausted when you've been around others for extended periods of time? And although you have enjoyed much of it, you can't wait to escape for some time to yourself. And if so, you might be an introvert. Do you become more energized when you get to spend some time with friends, talking, interacting, and stimulating your mind in that way? Do you find yourself drained of energy when none of your friends or colleagues are available to interact with? Although you too enjoy some time alone, if it goes on for too long, you just have to get out and connect with others. And if so, you might be an extrovert. And please understand, this is a very basic understanding of introverts and extroverts. Introversion and extroversion exist more in a spectrum rather than one or the other. So there's those that are at the far ends of each of these, introvert or extrovert. And there's those that tend to be, somewhere in the middle. There's also extroverts that tend to show up as being quieter or soft-spoken, but absolutely love and get energy from being around others often. And there's also introverts that tend to show up as being more loud or outspoken, but absolutely need to spend some time alone to be rejuvenated. Each of these two examples are a little bit less common though. And for those of you that want to learn more about introversion, I would recommend the book Quiet by Susan Cain. And we'll go ahead and provide the link for you. We have a resources worksheet for you. And in the back there, you'll find the link for that book. And another resource is an article that goes further into discussion about introverts and extroverts.
Kenny, I'm going to put another book in here that it's an old one, but I'm guessing it's still in print or available electronically. Here's the title. I'm not sure about the name of the author, but I think that's Jeannie. Does that look familiar to you? I think that's from the 70s or 80s. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Please understand me.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, I am. Well, Jeannie and I are both school counselors. We started off as school counselors, so I thought maybe that would resonate with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Awesome.
And I'm old.
And you're old. We share that too.
So go ahead and find the worksheet in the link and go to page 1 and decide whether you believe you're an introvert or an extrovert, and then provide an example describing what that looks like for you. And just go ahead and type it in, either in that top introvert part or the bottom extrovert part. And then finally at the bottom, there's a scale of introversion or extroversion, and go ahead and place a check mark in the appropriate square based on where you believe you fit on that 5-point scale. Are you at the far end of introversion, the far end of extroversion, or do you see yourself coming more towards the middle somewhere? Now let's talk about how each of us likes to be appreciated. It's important for all of us to know and receive appreciation that speaks to us. The appreciation languages comes from psychologist Dr. Paul White and the book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Again, in the resources, you'll find the website where you can purchase the survey if you want to learn about your primary and secondary appreciation language and your least valued language. And I think it's pretty inexpensive. I think it's, maybe $15 or less to take that survey, or you can just work through a worksheet here and kind of identify for yourself. So the first category is words of affirmation, and that's being affirmed through written or spoken words. And this may or may not be in front of other people, and it can range from being short and simple to more complex. Quality time is described as undivided personal attention. And this may or may not show up in a one-to-one environment. It could be in a small group for a project that you're working on. You may need one or more people to support you in this area of need or desire. The key part is time should be of quality and not just a quick show up and leave. Now, acts of service is when others are there to help you get things completed. It might be someone helping you grade papers, organize your classroom, support with a challenging student in your class. And this might be a real quick show up, get the job done and leave. And then tangible gifts. They're simply items that demonstrate that someone else is thinking about you by providing a gift. This doesn't include your salary, bonus, or raise. That's something that most, if not all of us, like to have. And so this would be a little different than that. And then finally, physical touch. It's typically less desired in the workplace, but it's still relevant. Some people feel connected by shaking hands, high fives, fist bumps, etc. I know a couple of the people that I work with that really appreciate physical touch. And this pandemic's been a little bit tough for them because they're used to, being in the office together, and, they're the ones that talk to you and put their hand on your shoulder, or like the hugs and things like that.
Kenny, that's me. Yeah, I remember at work talking about this about maybe it was a year or so ago, maybe before that, before the pandemic.
Yeah.
We were having this discussion, and it became a joke because I talked about how much I liked hugs, and so every meeting that everybody would come up and give me a hug.
Yeah.
And I have missed that with the pandemic. It's not only not getting hugs, not getting anything. It's like I'm in physical isolation from everyone. So it's been difficult.
Yeah. I mean, what is yeah, I mean, for myself, that's not something that I need. So for someone that does need something like that, what does that feel like without it, I guess?
It starts to feel like I'm just kind of spinning out in space, unconnected from everyone. And so I've dealt with it by getting even more involved in nature, going out and spending time, in the woods, in the forest, touching trees, touching flowers, and touching rocks, but just getting out where I can do something that's physical.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'm making a connection right now. I remember working with a student with autism, and we had someone coming out to work with them, and I had a better understanding of why he was up, moving around the classroom, touching stuff, climbing on stuff, seeing he was making sense of his environment. And maybe it wasn't a physical touch thing that he needed with people, but he needed to know his environment and kind of that sensory input, I guess, from everything around. So pretty interesting. All right. So let's spend a little bit of time determining your primary appreciation language and your least valued language of appreciation. This will help you to understand yourself better and be helpful for relaying this information to other people. So go ahead and go to the worksheet and go to page 2 and spend just a few minutes reflecting on your preferred and least valued language of appreciation. Place a green check mark for your preferred language and an X mark for your least valued language. Let's see if I'm going to adjust my screen here. I'll pause it for a second here. right, let me shrink this down a little bit. All right. So this was my previous part as far as gaining energy. I'm definitely an introvert. So I'll go back to this real quick. One of the things that I would do, an example, is on my way home from work, when I used to be at the sites and driving home, I would stop at the park before I got home, and I would just spend 15 to 20 minutes by myself. It might be just sitting in my car, closing my eyes for that time. It might be just sitting, doing something for myself. I might even walk around the park. And I know my wife and my daughter are total extroverts. And as soon as I get home, they want my full attention and energy. So I just wanted to make sure that I was available for them, you know? And so that was my example. And then, yeah, I kind of rated myself not at the extreme end of introversion, but definitely kind of more, not in the middle between the two, but definitely more towards being introverted.
Yeah, I every time I've done the Myers-Briggs, Kenny, I end up almost right dead in the middle on this one. And just maybe I remember when I took it in my 20s, I was a little further on the extrovert side, and I do enjoy being around people, but only for so long,
Yeah.
and then I'm ready for a break. Um,
Okay.
and I do enjoy being alone, but only
Yeah.
for so long, and then I'm ready to be around people again. But as I've gotten older, uh, I'm actually sliding more toward the introversion side. Definitely appreciating my time alone, my nature hikes, reading a good book. Um, it seems like the older I get, the more I'm leaning in that direction.
That's funny because I feel like the older I'm getting, I'm starting to become a little bit more extroverted. Um, and I'm curious because you and I had talked about this before. I'm married to a total extrovert. And so I'm learning to definitely take my time to re-energize and be very intentional about it. But then I'm also learning to, um, I don't know, I guess be prepared to be with the extroverts. And I feel like I'm becoming a little bit more extroverted,
Hmm.
you know?
And I, on the other hand, am married to a complete introvert.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I think it's somehow we start um, to help each other, in
Yeah.
both those areas. And eventually, I don't know if it's truly a sign of health if you're like right in the middle, of
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, maybe. For appreciation languages, um, my primary language is quality time. This is important to me because um, I feel like I don't ask for much very often, but then when I do, I want that the undivided personal attention. When I do finally ask for that time, and then my least favorite is tangible gifts. Um, Again, this is kind of funny because my wife, she loves gifts. I could buy her something from Dollar Tree and she would be excited because for her, it just meant that I was thinking about her during my day. And I stopped to pick something up for her. It could be a bag of M&Ms. It doesn't really matter. For myself, and she does this, she'll pick something up at maybe it's Dollar Tree or wherever it's at. And I'm like, don't waste our money on those little things. Like, you know so it's just kind of funny how that works out. So for you, Dean, where do you see yourself as a primary appreciation language?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mentioned physical touch is definitely the thing I like. I like the
Yeah.
most. And we are keeping this G rated, so I won't say much more than that. But I it's kind of, I think the other thing would probably be words of affirmation is, another one that I
Yeah.
appreciate. And I think my wife does as well. And I think acts of service. Um, as as we're growing old together, it's like the things that we do to help each other, get things accomplished are very much appreciated, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would be your least favorite or least appreciated?
Yeah, probably the same as you, tangible gift. Yeah, I'm not real big on tangible gifts. So yeah, I think pretty much the same as you on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know when you, if you go on to the website and, pay for the test there, they'll provide you with a little, they explain it out pretty well.
Mhm.
And they'll identify a primary appreciation language, a secondary, and then your least favorite. So that's the way that they do it. And they give you kind of a breakdown summary of each one of those.
Mhm.
So, all right, I'm going to switch my screen again. All right. All right. Now, personality tests. So let's take a few of the personality tests out there. And the Myers-Briggs is one of them. The DISC is one, and the Enneagram. And these are just a few of them that are out there. These might be something you're interested in exploring on your own, and you may have already done so. We're not going to be going into any depth here today, but I thought it'd be good to mention them and just talk about them briefly, because they could be important for your self-discovery journey and your journey to discovering how others operate. Some of the personality tests have been around longer than others, and some have been validated through research, and others may not be. And I think the validated research is something that's kind of up for debate when you're kind of researching these different personality tests. But the Enneagram has been one that's become increasingly popular over the last few years. And there's some resources out there that help to better understand one's own Enneagram number, how one might lean toward one number higher or lower than their strongest, and what a particular number looks like when acting healthy and unhealthy, and how someone with a particular number might get along with each of the other numbers. Okay, so Dean, what is your familiarity with these personality tests and how they might be useful for someone to engage with them?
Well, yeah, you mentioned validity, and I think there's questionable nature around that, but I think they can be used just like we're talking about right now as a kind of a self-awareness tool, that maybe could help us get to know ourselves a little bit better, and in the process of getting to know ourselves a little bit better, understand a little bit more about how we show up for other people, given our unique tendencies. And I think that the thing about all these things is that they're talking about sort of general temperament, that you may show up in this way most of the time. There's always exceptions to that, but just knowing how the lens at which you look through the world, um, and then the lens at which people see you. Um, and if nothing else, Kenny, I think it can be an interesting catalyst for conversation.
Mm.
I know you and I have had a couple of conversations
Yeah.
around this. That it's that some of the information that we've gleaned from these have been helpful in us understanding ourselves, and then also being able to explain ourselves to someone else. Oh, this is why I think I show up like this because of
Yeah.
this, right? And it's interesting what I'll just mention with the Enneagram. Types 8, 9, and 1 are called the body types.
Mm.
So it's not surprising, given that I'm a 9, that my favorite way of being appreciated is through touching. It's consistent with that.
Mm.
Um, so there's just kind of these intriguing aspects that I think help with developing greater self-awareness, and then also greater awareness for others, greater empathy, especially empathy for others in terms
Yeah.
of how people show up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I feel like again, I know I use my wife as an example. I feel like for us, it's just really helped us to kind of understand each other. And I'm speaking specifically to the Enneagram.
Mhm.
I've done a little bit of work with the Myers-Briggs, but mostly with the Enneagram. And it's pretty cool because her and I will send each other, we're on social media when I'm like, hey, did you know this about a 9 or this about an 8? And it really is helpful for conversations. It's also pretty interesting. So I'm a 9, which is a peacemaker, and my wife is an 8, which is a challenger. And so it tends to be a little bit tough at times because I just want I just want to get along all the time with everyone, right? And my wife is like, no, I'm going to challenge you on that, you know? And so, we might have a discussion and I'm like, look, you got to understand, I'm the peacemaker. Like, I don't want to have a conflict. And she's like, this isn't a conflict. This is just a conversation. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because you're a challenger, you know? So it's fun. It's fun. We've had a good time with it so far. All right. Moving on, let's reflect on knowing ourselves and see if you can identify what it looks like when you are not at your best. So go ahead and look at the worksheet and go to page 3, where you'll be asked to reflect on a situation where you have shown up this way at work, and then see if you can identify a culprit that may be related to introversion or extroversion, or appreciation language that could have contributed to you showing up in this way. All right, I'll go ahead and talk through, and here's what page 3 looks like. Where you'll be asked to reflect on a situation when you have not shown up at your best at work. Okay. And so for here, this is one of my examples. When we were all in person, we had monthly team meetings. And so we would have 10 of us in a conference room that's pretty small. And people were excited, they're talking loud, and there was just tons of energy going on. And when it would come to lunchtime, they say, hey, let's just do a working lunch and we'll just keep going. And for me, I had to take lunch by myself. As all this energy was going on, I started to contribute less and less, and the longer the team was together, and so this was just really contributing to me showing up with little input towards the team and really feeling unable or unwilling to work with the team during lunch. And so I was just totally depleted of energy, and I just needed quiet space to myself. So that's me as an introvert. I don't, Dean, you were in some of those
I
meetings.
was. Yeah, you're reminding me. I was in some of those meetings with you. And I was mad at you that you didn't come to lunch with us.
Yeah.
It's funny is that for me, the opportunity to go to lunch with the people that I'd been having these serious work-related conversation with was appealing because I anticipated a shift in the focus from work to pleasure, from work to fun. And so for me, it was like, okay, if I go and do something fun at lunchtime and I get to know these people a little bit better, I felt like I'd be better prepared to spend another 3 hours with them in the afternoon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just, and again, just our operating lens, right? It's like, what's gonna give me the most energy? What's gonna give you the most energy? And it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it totally is. And I mean, there was definitely times where I felt energized enough where it was like, yeah. And because most of the time I didn't want to miss out, and I didn't want people to think that, I was being rude. or I didn't want to be around them. But sometimes, I was just so wiped out from processing so much information, so much energy. So it was tough at times to, to kind of figure out how to navigate that. All right. Now that we know a little bit more about ourselves, in this second part, we're going to look at how we can develop ourselves further. So let's think about being more introverted or extroverted and develop some plans on what we can do to show up as our best selves. So we previously talked about gaining or losing energy, depending on being introverted or extroverted. So go ahead and go to the worksheet and go to page 4. And I'll go with my example previously from work. And what I did on my lunch break was I took a 20-minute nap in the car, and then 20 minutes to eat my lunch. And I would have the air conditioning on, and I would just set my alarm. And for me, I came back to the group with more energy, more ideas, and much more talkative than I was previously. And so even though I missed out on that lunchtime, kind of being able to connect with people, I felt like I was able to give more of myself when I kind of took care of my needs and what I needed. So I'm going to ask you to think of a place of work and a plan you can develop to show up as your best self. Okay. So please write down 3 things you can do at work that would give you more energy and or allow you to recoup energy that's been lost. And then go ahead and write down 3 things you can do before or after work that would give you more energy and or allow you to recuperate energy that's been lost. Dean, what is something that you do while you're at work that gives you energy?
While I'm at work, what's funny is I've been working out of my bedroom for the last year, and my windows look out on a beautiful garden that my wife has planted, and I am staring right now at an abundance of flowers. And so when I need a break, I take my eyes off of this wonderful computer screen and I cast my gaze to the right, and I'm looking at pink and yellow and purple flowers, and I'm watching the breeze blow through the trees, and that gives me energy while I'm at work.
Nice.
Yeah.
And anyone can speak up at this time if you want. What about like when you're on a school campus and and you're working like as a teacher, as a counselor? What's something that you can do at work that gives you more energy? Yeah, go for it, Jeannie.
Well, I know when I was at the school campus, I was working as an administrator, I needed to get out of my office and go see kids and know the reason why I was there. So I used to go walk the campus and see the kids while they were out at the recess or break time or whatever. And I know even at home, while I've been working at home during this last year, walk the dog. So I need to get out, like Dean says, look out the window, see something nice, but I need to go take the dog for a walk, like at my lunch break or whatever. So get out and stretch, see nature, refocus, and then go back in with a little more energy.
Okay, nice. So is it kind of, obviously you have a love for kids, but is it also that physical movement of kind of moving around it?
Both, yes.
Nice. Okay. Now, what about something before or after work?
That's easy for me. I've gotten into the habit now of I wake up early. I get up early anyway, and I go for a hike. And I'll do. It might be as few as 2 miles, but I have a couple of favorite trails right near me, and takes me about an hour, hour and a half to get out there and feel my my feet in the dirt, and again, to watch the sun come up, and just be outdoors. And that is a way for me to ground myself throughout the day. If I do
Mm,
that first thing in the morning, I just have a better day.
yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I see in the chat, Clarissa said the same thing, hiking.
Yes, hiking, go hiking.
So I'm curious too. I mean, I can't remember where because we did some of this work before too, but I'm guessing, Dean, for you, you have appreciation for beauty.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's probably being out in nature. That must rejuvenate you a little bit, just like you're talking about, just looking out your window.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Good art, good poetry. I said flowers. I've been hiking the same trails long enough now where I'm looking for a particular flower to reemerge after the summer, after the fall,
Mhm.
the winter. That, oh yeah, last year there was a Canterbury bell right here next to this rock, and I wonder if it's going to show up this year.
Hmm.
So just falling in love with a particular flower. That's a new thing for me, but definitely love nature, and it's very, very energizing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I see Clarissa also said the sounds of nature.
Yeah.
Um, even if she can't get out in the woods to hike, just being able to hear it.
Yep.
See,
So
Casey was saying,
coincidentally, I'll just mention this, but you guys may have heard this already. They did a study where they asked people, people that were in the study basically got a message throughout the day, asking them to rate their happiness level, like on a scale of 1 to 9, or 1 to 10, 1 being not very happy, 10 being happy. And then after giving themselves a rating, then next question is, what do you hear? And then what do you see? And so people who heard birds chirping or who saw trees or flowers rated themselves happier than people who didn't.
hmm, interesting. Yeah, no, I see Casey said the same thing.
Yeah.
Birds chirping, sounds of just the trees,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know that for me it works well too. I definitely feel much more at peace when I'm out in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Some birds are too much though, yeah.
Uh,
And here's just a list of some examples that someone might use to recuperate. And there's two lists here, and they're not separated by any particular category. But I know these are some things that people do. It could be coffee and reading, exercise, social media, talking on the phone, book clubs, sports, coaching, lunch with friends or alone, prayer time, meditation, driving, talk radio, music, dancing, art, manual labor, gameplay. Um, Kind of funny. People think I'm a little bit crazy sometimes with the manual labor. Um, for me, I did that for quite a long time, and there's just some peace about it. Even if you're just out digging some trenches, and it's just that physical exertion, and you're just kind of, it's easy. There's not a whole lot of mental effort going on there, other than just kind of pushing your body physically.
mm-hmm.
And so for me, it works.
Mm-hmm.
You got some work for me, huh, Jeannie?
Yeah.
Nice.
She can help you get energized.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. My dad's a contractor, and so yeah, one of his friends retired in the last few years, and he said, "You know what? How about I come work for you a little bit, and I'll do your demolition tear out and stuff." He said, basically, I'm doing CrossFit, but you're going to pay me instead of me paying the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets his workout that way. All right. Let's go ahead and reflect back on the 5 appreciation languages. In a previous activity, you identified your primary and your lowest language or your least favorite language appreciation on page 2. And so now we're going to ask you to develop an action plan on these items by letting others know. So I hope you're willing to be vulnerable and draft an email to send to your supervisor. And please consider sending these to anyone else you might be in a working relationship with. Dean, who would you want to know about your appreciation language in the workplace, and how might you go about telling them about it?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know that I would do it with an email, but I'm more of an extrovert body person.
Yeah.
So for me, and actually, Kenny, I remember having this conversation at our office, and it came up. It was really prompted by, our company leadership, which I appreciated, and so it was very safe to say, what our chosen language was, and I appreciated that. And so doing it in that setting was wonderful. If I was going to send an email, I probably would preface it with something like, hey, I just attended a webinar and we were talking about, how, our appreciation language, and I realized that, this is what works, best for me. And so, as my supervisor, I just want to let you know, since you're working with me, so it's not coming out of left field, like,
yeah,
why is Dean telling me that he wants to get hugged?
yeah.
So I'd want to preface it with, sort of an explanation of why I'm doing it, and that I'm thinking it would be helpful in terms of the supervisory relationship that we have with one another. So for people that worked for me, it was helpful for me to know their language as their supervisor, when I was wanting to acknowledge something they did. That helped me know which of these to choose, right? So
Yeah.
So it can be really helpful in that way.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, when we talk about equity, to me, this is one of the areas that you can be equitable with your teammates or the staff that you're overseeing. And instead of it being kind of like a blanketed appreciation where you treat everyone the same, obviously it's harder, it's more challenging, but it probably means a lot more too when it's something that you actually appreciate.
Kenny, I appreciate you saying that, because equity does require a little bit more work, because it requires of us to find out what the other person needs, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to ask and we have to listen, and but it's well worth it, and it's really this is a pleasant way to try to introduce some equity, into the workplace, and so I like that you brought that up.
Yeah. Jeannie.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I just wanted to add it. At one time, I was a director of a preschool setting, and we had probably 40 employees, all women, I might add, and you're in a very small, confined environment. And in one classroom, you might have 6 people, AM and PM shifts, and tensions ran kind of high, emotions ran kind of high. We did the DISC profile, and it was super enlightening, because it just showed that, so many different personality styles. And like you say, we all needed things differently. We had different strengths and we had different needs, and it just was so enlightening for everybody to be able to share and to put it into words, and to see that she's not being rude to me. That's how she processes information, or what have you. And even on my direct team, we had, it's DISC, we had different people. On my direct team, we had one of each. We had a D, an I, an S, a C, and it was perfect, because we all just fit so great. None of us were exactly alike, but everybody had a role, and it just worked well. So I think it is great if we can communicate that, and for people to understand each other. Mm-hmm. Helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, my experience at home, I definitely, acts of service is definitely up there for me. And so I would just bust my butt trying to demonstrate for my wife how much I appreciated her, and I'm doing dishes, I'm cleaning up and this and that. And she's like, that is not my, when we're talking about the marriage stuff, that's not my love language. Acts of service is not. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm showing you, like, I'm trying to do this for you. And she's like, yeah, but I would rather you come and sit next to me on the couch and put your arm around me and spend some time together than you doing that. And I'm like, but I'm working so hard. But it just wasn't in the right direction, you know? And we've kind of shifted over the years where now she's liking that a bit more. So, it's working a little bit more now than it used to.
But probably because you guys talked about it and it's out in the open. She knows why you're doing it. Right?
Yeah, no, that's true. So for this next part, we're going to go ahead and use Washington's K through 12 social emotional learning standards to see where our social emotional skills lie. So go ahead and go to the worksheet and go to pages 5, 6, and 7. And then what I'm asking you to do here is rate yourself on a scale of 1 through 5. Okay. 1 means you have a consistent difficulty meeting a particular benchmark. 2 means meeting the benchmark is often difficult. 3 means it depends on the situation or circumstances. 4 is often a strength. And 5 is a consistent strength for you in that particular benchmark. So you only need to mark 1 number for each of the benchmarks, and just choose the number that best represents you in the last few years, because we grow, we develop, we mature. And so we change over the years. And I think, Nico, do you have that? Is that part of the first worksheet, or is that a separate one?
It's part of the first one.
Okay, great. Yeah, so go ahead and do that. If you'd like to reference an indicator for each standard, I'll go ahead and put a link, because I don't think I shared this one with you, Nico. But there's a resource for Washington's standards, benchmarks, and indicators. And that's starting on page D7. And in the far right-hand column, what you'll see is it goes by kind of your elementary, middle school, high school, and it's high school / adult indicators. And so go ahead and take some time now, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and rate yourself according to these standards. And this will be used for your reference only, so no one else will be viewing it in any way. But let me go ahead and grab that link and put it in the chat. Just in case anyone wants that one. And we might want to add that to the resources page, since I didn't do that one previously. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and take a look. If you're working on it, go ahead, you can ignore me. But I'm going to talk through my results, because I went ahead and worked through the worksheet as well. So I'm going to adjust my screen here. There we go. All right. So here's my results here. As you can see, I worked through self-awareness at the top here, rated myself a 4 in benchmark 1A, a 4 in 1B, and then a 3 in 1C. And this is all in the self-awareness standard. Okay. And then you'll see over here a percentage. Now the worksheet should calculate it for you. I know I did not have an updated version of Adobe on my desktop, and so it didn't calculate it for me. But basically the calculations work out of 5. So for this first, it would be 5, 10, 15. So whatever your score is. So like for me, it's 11 out of 15, and then that'll give you your percentage if it doesn't calculate it automatically for you. And then standard 4 is around social awareness. And so for myself, it was a 4, another 4, and then a 3. And that's understanding variation with and across cultures. And that score there is a 73. And so obviously my awareness, because we have the self-awareness and social awareness. So excuse me, the combined score right there is a 73%. And then as we move through, we have the self-management and social management. Hopefully this is accurate. I rated myself pretty favorably there. 5s in both of these.
I think that's artificially inflated.
It might be a little bit. Who knows? And then for social management, a 4, a 4, and a 5. And so overall, my management skills show up pretty well there. And then we come down to standard 3, which is self-efficacy. And I have a 3, a 4, and a 2, which is definitely a bit lower than some of my others. And then social engagement, 5, 4, and a 5. And you know, this rating scale, this was just something that I put together based on Washington's SEL standards. So there's really no reliability or validity with any of the percentages or anything like that. But I think it's just useful tool just to kind of see where you're at. And we'll talk through this a bit more. You know, but when it comes to, you know, teaching kids and whatnot, you know, I would say if I rate myself as a 2 here, this is probably not my strongest area when it comes to teaching others on how to do this, you know, and that's demonstrating awareness and ability to speak on behalf of personal rights and advocacy. That's always been an area of struggle for me. I'm probably not the best person to teach that to other people. But anyways, those are some of my results there. Then I'll bring us back over here. All right. And then on the next part, if you've finished all of that, go ahead and go to page 8. And on page 8, this is where we have the reflection of the results. Okay. And these are the questions that are being asked. You know, what are your combined areas of highest percentage? What are your highest benchmark percentage? Then did this surprise you in any way or confirm what you already thought or knew? And then what are your combined areas of lowest percentage? And then what about your lowest benchmark percentage? And again, did any of this information surprise you in any way or confirm what you already thought? All right, yeah, we got the worksheet there in the chat. And so I'll
just
process.
Throw out that for those of us in the room that are extroverts, this activity, you might find this activity helpful to do with someone else. So you can talk about it out loud and process it with somebody else, as opposed to just sitting and doing it by yourself. So just something to think about.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for myself, what are my combined areas of highest percentage? And that was the self-management and social management at 92%. And again, you can easily kind of scroll through these and see where you're at. And then highest benchmark percentage was that self-management. And I put each of the, 2A, 2B, the social management was 5C, social engagement was 6A and 6C. And then my highest percentage was 100%, and that was just in one of the areas. I think that was the self-management. And then for me, was any of this information surprising or confirm what I already thought? And for me, it was more confirming. The social engagement strength was a little surprising to me because I would have originally thought it would have been an area of weakness. But the way the benchmarks are described, it made sense to me. So if I go to social engagement 6A and 6C, yeah, because when I think about kind of that being good at being social, I guess in general, I would say that's a little bit more of an area that I struggle with. But based on these, 6A is demonstrates a sense of school and community responsibility. I definitely have a strong sense of responsibility there. And then it contributes productively to one's school, workplace, and community. And so I do believe those are both strengths for me. Typically, when I think of social engagement, I'm thinking of more like when we're going to conferences and we're engaging socially with a lot of people. That tends to be a little bit more of a struggle for me, or even at like parties and things like that. So I tend to gravitate to someone else who's really good at it, and I kind of I'm like their wingman. I go along with them, So I definitely hang out with Dean at a conference, and
But I think that too points up to the functional nature of these, is that it's not just socializing for the sake of socializing, in terms of engagement, but it's engagement with a purpose. And you're it's socially engaged in a way that you're contributing to the betterment of your school and your community.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In this third part, we're going to make some plans to maintain the best version of ourselves. The first thing we need to do is take care of ourselves. And I know this might sound a little egocentric, but if we don't take care of ourselves, it'll be extremely challenging to be healthy in our service to others. And so, the first question I have is, what are we instructed to do when we're on an airplane and there's an emergency where we need to put on an oxygen mask? Okay. And then what is the number one rule when rescuing someone else? So when flying on an airplane, the adults are instructed to put on their mask prior to helping anyone else getting on their mask. We'll hear this on the announcement, especially if there's a child next to you. And we're supposed to take care of ourselves first, because we cannot help those around us if all of a sudden we pass out and we're not available. And the number one rule when rescuing someone else is not to become a victim yourself. So you have to make sure you're safe before you can help someone else. If you're unsafe or healthy, then you need to take care of yourself first. Get that health up. And so this doesn't mean we get to continue unhealthy behaviors so that we never have to take care of anyone else. It means we need to get ourselves healthy and safe so we can give more to others.
So I'll just throw in something, Kenny, that I heard Dr. Bruce Perry mention. Dr. Bruce Perry does a lot of work around trauma, right? And so he's done a whole series of little webinars related to trauma. And so in one of them, he's talking about our capacity to self-regulate. And he made the comment that that if we're not able to self-regulate, then we will never be able to help a child regulate. If we show up unregulated, we have no hope of helping regulate that child. So it just kind of is definitely in line with what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
First comes self-regulation, then that child or student will mirror us. If we're calm, regulated, then they will become calm and regulated.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes total sense. But I'll be honest, I've had an internal struggle with this idea of taking care of myself before helping others. So, I do a lot of audiobooks, and some of the titles, like Leaders Eat Last and Servant Leadership in Action, the assumption or the messaging is to put others ahead of ourselves when we're in some kind of leadership role. And so, I don't know if I'm speaking for anyone else, but how do I reconcile this internal conflict of taking care of myself or putting the needs of others ahead of my own? What are some of your thoughts on that, Dean?
I would say you eat last unless you're starving to death and you can't feed anybody else because of that.
Yeah.
Ultimately it comes down to you can't do anything if you're mentally or physically or emotionally incapable of doing it, because you've deprived yourself of whatever you need to be healthy and whole. And so it just points up again. I think those, and again, I think what I mentioned to you that when we talk about self-awareness, we're talking more about a psychological principle. And most of those books are written with a sociological orientation. So how do we perform and work best with others? But in order to work best with others, we have to put ourselves in our best position. So for me, it's not difficult to reconcile that.
Yeah.
I see the need to take care of myself so that I will be able to take care of those around me, whether it be to make a living, to help take care of my children or whatever. That's like, I need to do what I need to do so I can take care of those that I love and care about.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. I love the kind of that psychological or that social kind of difference to help me with that conflict a bit. And as many schools that I've been at visiting or working at myself, I got to be honest, I see the leadership, the administration at the site. I don't see them eating lunch much. I don't see them eating lunch. I don't see them taking many breaks. I mean, it's a very challenging position to be, a principal or a leader on a school site, even as a teacher. When, you're trying to connect with your kids or give them more tutoring time. And so we tend to shove our lunch down and, not do that self-care.
Kenny, when you said that, it reminds me of a situation. I worked at a very large high school for a while. It was about 4,600 students, and we had, I think there were 8 school counselors. There were like 7 administrators, and so we had 2 lunches because there were so many students that you couldn't have everybody on campus at once. And so, and I'm in the habit of I stop and take a lunch break. That's what I do. And so I was working there, and I would we'd have to go between lunches. We had about a half an hour between lunches, and so one day I'm sitting in the lunchroom by myself, and one of the other administrators walks in. It's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "What are you doing in here? Nobody eats lunch." And I was like, "Yeah, I stop and take a lunch break. It's part of my self-care, whatever." Well, so he sits down and has lunch with me, and then the next day, a couple of other people join us, and by the end of the week, we had everybody.
Nice.
Almost because there was almost a shame factor in taking lunch. Like, it's like, no, if we're going to talk to other people on our campus about self-care, we have to model self-care. And if we want to protect ourselves from burnout, we have to model self-care. And again, it's just, doing what we need to do in order to take care of ourselves so that we're at our best.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think
Uh-huh.
there's a bit of like shaming involved with what you're actually taking a break. Aren't you giving you're supposed to be giving everything
Yeah.
to those you serve, and so it's almost like it's this culture that we've created where it's kind of like a badge of honor to work yourself to death and be unhealthy.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, like
Opposed to
Clarissa
some
says.
countries where you take a 2 or 3 hour lunch break,
Yeah,
have a wonderful dinner with your family and a nice cup of coffee afterwards, and then you kind of make your way back to the office.
yeah, good point, Clarissa. We don't want to be hangry either.
That's
That's
right.
not good. It's not good for the kids. And I'll have to say, I went back to Leaders Eat Last, and this was coming from Marines, and they're those that are higher up, they eat last, but it doesn't say they don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
It just says those that are ranking lower than them, they serve that, they allow them to eat first.
Yeah.
So all right. Self-care, please go to page 9, 10, and 11 in your worksheet. And we'll be setting goals in this section on maintaining. So go ahead and look back at the list that you created of ways to increase or recuperate energy, and identify at least one of these things that you're going to do over the next 90 days and make a commitment to it. Track your progress daily and reflect on it every 30 days. Feel free to spend the next several minutes writing your goals. And I'll talk through each of my goals for the next few minutes here. I am going to go to the worksheet again. Let me adjust this. Oops. Let's see. There we go. This is just a sample goal of mine. I used the SMART goal format here, and I'll choose exercises that are realistic given my current health. And I had planned on taking a baseline data on my exercise, so time, distance, my weight, etc. And I want to take better care of myself, knowing that I'm an introvert, right? And I'll work out by myself for at least 3 days per week. And I'll start my independent workouts on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays this week, and reflect on my progress at the end of the month. And I'm going to do that for the next 90 days. So that's something that I'm going to do. Here for appreciation language, I'm going to track the number of times someone speaks my appreciation language. And I'm going to do this by tracking the occurrences per week. And I think it's pretty reasonable for me to just pay attention to that and be able to do it. And it's relevant just because I really want to increase positive thinking by focusing on others demonstrating appreciation to me. And again, I'm going to do this weekly, monthly, and every 90 days. And then when it comes to the SEL standards, I want to learn more about the variations within my culture and that of others. And so I'm going to ask at least one question about someone else's culture when I'm talking with my neighbors or at social gatherings. And this has worked out really well for me. Just, by chance, I don't know. We have on my street, we have 2 neighbors that are from different parts of Africa. And we have another neighbor from South America. And then we just got another new neighbor from China. And so it's like I have access, right? I have really good opportunities to be able to connect with these people. And we've been able to do that so far. It's awesome having a wife that's an extrovert and a daughter as well. So one of the things that we've done is we actually will do a movie night. And so we have a small projector and we'll project it up on our garage door. And my daughter makes all the invitations and we go pass them out. And we've had a ton of neighbors come over and we're all able to connect and just kind of learn more about each other. So I think it's very attainable for me. It's reasonable, but it'll be a stretch for me to ask questions without feeling like I'm prying into someone's personal life. So that'll be a little bit tough. And it will connect to my values of listening and learning about others. And again, I'm going to do this weekly, monthly, and every 90 days. And then when it comes to the SMART goals, how often will I need to check on the progress of my goals? I plan to do that monthly. And I'm going to go ahead and set reminders on my calendar. I tend to forget things a lot. And if I write it down somewhere, it's in too many different places. So I use my phone for everything. And so I put everything on my calendar. And then as far as having just a routine for goal reflection, I'm going to check on progress and I'm going to adjust as needed. And I'm going to focus more on growth versus completion. And we'll get into the kind of growth mindset stuff a little bit here. And no, I don't need an accountability partner for this. I'll be able to do that.
I'm afraid you do, Kenny.
We'll be calling Dean. Dean's going to be checking in on me, even though I didn't ask for accountability. All right. I'm going to move us along a little bit here. Just went through each of these. And then I want to get into this, what do we do when we don't meet our own expectations, okay, or that of others? And so do we start that negative self-talk? Are we harder on ourselves than others are on us? And do we have unbelievably high expectations that are probably unrealistic? If we do any of these things, we should really take a look at some strategies, right, to combat it. And so in the chart, you'll see some statements about having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And so you go ahead and take a few minutes to read through them and reflect on your mindset. For more information on growth and fixed mindset, you could check out Carol Dweck's book on mindset, The New Psychology of Success. And this one's been out for a while. You can also check out the website Mindset Works for teacher resources and research articles as well. All right, so persevering during challenging times. So let's take a look at a couple strategies that's going to help us to persevere during these challenging times. One of those things, an identity statement, is something that you'll develop to push yourself through difficult times or to simply shift your mindset. And this might sound a little bit crazy, but according to the research, the further from the truth the statement is, the more impactful it'll be. So as an educator, consider telling yourself that you make millions of dollars per year and you're just gleaming with positive energy all the time. And so statements like this, repeated on a daily basis, cause you to believe in yourself and accomplish great things. And you might also consider a statement that will pull you towards meeting a particular goal. And I love this picture of Muhammad Ali with the quote, And it says, I am the greatest, and I said it before I even knew I was. And Muhammad Ali is one of those. Obviously, if you listen back or you watched him during his prime and whatnot, he was pretty darn arrogant. But when it comes to developing a personal identity statement, that's what he was doing, you know. Another strategy is called power posing. And this is where a person practices putting their body into certain postures or positions that conveys a message of power. And so we see this kind of posing with professional athletes often. All right, so they'll cross the finish line with both hands high in the air, or they raise up the trophy or medal they or their team just won. And these types of positions can be used when you're in a quiet room by yourself, before a big interview or meeting that you've been stressing about. It could be right before you confront a challenging situation, or simply a daily practice to have more of a positive feeling throughout your day. Go ahead and go to page 12 and set a goal around restoring your relationship with yourself if you've engaged in any of this kind of negative self-talk. Kind of interesting story. I remember watching the video, and I don't think I referenced this, but it's in the resources as well. Amy Cuddy did a TED Talk on your body language may shape who you are. And this is where she talks about the power posing. And I remember having many students, but one in particular that really, he was always just kind of hunched over and just didn't really have much confidence in himself. And so I took him and just kind of met with him one-on-one. And I said, hey, there's this thing called power posing. And I was telling him all about it. And I said, I just want you to practice right now. Like no one else is around. It's just you and I. And I just want you to lift your arms up in the air into one of these power poses. And it was just a struggle for him. He just couldn't do it. And, I pulled him a couple more times to kind of encourage him to do this, but it was interesting how some people, it might be so natural or easy for them to do. And for others, it's so uncomfortable to put their body just into this power position. And I know I've practiced this a little bit myself before going into like a job interview, or even before this webinar. I practiced that a little bit because it puts your body into this certain position and it just helps your body feel better. So something to think about doing.
Those are, I think some of those poses are things that you're going to do in the process of doing yoga also.
Oh, okay.
Right. So just opening your heart and, it's just opening up, right, to the possibilities of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, a lot of people engage in yoga practices, which is helpful for relaxation in the mind and getting centered. But it also really helps, put your bodies in position where you open yourself to possibilities.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point. All right, so I would say go ahead and use this time to identify a goal around having a growth mindset, a personal identity statement, or power posing. I'm gonna go ahead and keep moving us forward here, but again, you're gonna have your worksheet, and you can set some goals in this area. And you know what? Before I go further with that, when it comes to goals, obviously with this worksheet, there's a lot of goals in here that we're asking you to do. Realistically, and from kind of what the research is showing, work on one goal at a time. We're setting a bunch of goals here, but if you really want to accomplish it, finish one goal and then move on after you've met that goal to the next one. And I know one of the books that I read They actually say for 90 days. Until you are really solid on that goal, don't move on to the next one. So just something to think about. All right. And we can go ahead and put this in the chat if anyone wants to participate that way, or we could speak out loud. But from what we've gone over so far, what is maybe one thing that you were reminded of or that you learned? What is one question that you have about what you've heard so far? What is one idea or piece of knowledge that you can share? So I'll just wait a couple minutes and we'll see if anyone wants to put anything in the chat or go ahead and speak out loud. All right, so the importance of self-care and the importance of communicating your needs to others. Awesome. Oh, the power pose. Cool. Yeah, I'd really encourage you to watch the TED Talk of Amy Cuddy on that. It's really interesting, and she really goes into depth. I think that one's probably about 20 minutes long on that video. Yep, understanding other people. Yeah, with the personality types. I like it. It's been a lot of fun. Again, my wife and I, we follow a couple different people on Instagram that they share out, what is for myself, a 9, a peacemaker. What does that look like when you show up healthy? Or when you're unhealthy, what does that look like? So it's really cool. It's a lot of fun. All right. Well, I'm looking at the time here. We're at 4:23. So I'm going to move us ahead a bit. I know the second half was really looking at authentic relationships with others. We did the self. So I'm going to read a couple of the quotes, and then I'm going to go ahead and skip through towards the end there. In the book, The Vibrant Workplace by Dr. Paul White says, most of us don't want to just put in the time and collect our paycheck. We want to use our skills, education, and experience, who we are, to make a difference. And not only do we want to make a valuable contribution to our employer and clients, but we like others to notice and value us as well. This next one by Roland Barthes says, the nature of relationships among the adults within a school has a greater influence on the character and quality of that school and on student accomplishment than anything else. If the relationships between administrators and teachers are trusting, generous, helpful, and cooperative, then the relationships between teachers and students, between students and students, and between teachers and parents are likely to be trusting, generous, helpful, and cooperative as well. And I love that quote. I feel like we all know it, but accomplishing it is the tougher part.
Yeah, I think the truth of that resonates for me because I've worked in environments where this was very much the case. And I worked in environments where it was not.
Yeah.
And definitely there's I think an element of truth about how, which just speaks to the importance of the relationship that we have with our coworkers and how crucial that is.
Yeah.
Not only for our own well-being, but for the well-being of the students that we're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a couple stories there as well where the staff and the culture at the site was awesome, and then another where it wasn't, and the kids feel it. They really do. All right. I'm going to move us through here. I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute here. And if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and throw it in the chat or speak out if you want. I just wanted to kind of advertise here. There's, excuse me, more training opportunities. And so go ahead and check out our community of equitable and inclusive practices. And this is it's a flexible 6 hours worth of training, and it's funded through the Inclusionary Practices Project, and it comes at no cost to participants. And we're also offering restorative practices, which is flexible 12 hours worth of training. And again, it's funded through the Inclusionary Practices Project, and it comes at no cost to participants. And so for more information on either of these, go ahead and contact Nico. Nico's here with us today. Check in the chat, and Nico put his email address and phone number in there as well. Our next webinar is on equity. So understanding implicit bias. And it's coming up next Thursday, May 13th from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Learn how good, well-meaning people can produce and perpetuate harmful behaviors and outcomes. They'll be discussing specific strategies to engage in compassionate dialogue. They're going to be talking about building capacity, alternative ways of responding to diversity, and utilizing tools to analyze bias-based beliefs. And please help us serve you better by completing our survey. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the time with us.